it's Karen Burniston here with my monthly designer challenge video. The theme this month is window cards. I particularly love window cards with pop-ups because you get a chance to see an item in the flat position, and then when you open the card it moves. So in this case I'm going to be using our pop-up ball die, the smaller one, our bitty ball pop-up, and then some of our tiny gnomes and other dies. And you can check out all of those designs at karenburniston.com. I will be making a 6x6 card. So I started with a piece of cardstock, 12 inches by 6 inches, and scored it in the middle for folding. I found this piece of photoplay paper in my stash, and I was able to cut it so that there was a snowflake right in the center. And the size of that piece of paper is 5 3/4 inch square. Window cards don't always have to have transparency inside to cover the window opening. I mean, you can just have an open window. But for this card, I decided I did want a transparency. And so when I added this pattern paper, I only used my adhesive on one side. And I chose the left side, but it wouldn't matter. The important thing is just that I am able, after die cutting my window, to get between those two layers to get the transparency in. The transparency itself can just be a thin transparency like a printer or a write-on transparency. I need to find the direct center of the card and put a hole through the entire card. Now for me that's easy because I use this snowflake paper and I'm just going right through the center of the snowflake, but you could measure down 3 inches from the top, 3 inches from the side to find that center. We offer 2 ball dies, the difference mainly being size. The bitty ball pop-up, which I'm using today, is about 20% smaller. I am going to use the decorator trapezoids out of the surprise ball pop-up just to help me make some frames. Okay, step 1, I want to make the windows. And the way I'm going to do that is using the bitty ball pop-up die as a guide. So I'm getting it so that the center is directly over the hole that I put into the card, and then I'm using some temporary removable tape to hold it in place. Okay, and then I'm just going to use a pencil to trace all of those trapezoid openings from the die onto the paper. So now I have an easy die guide, basically, to help me place the trapezoid dies to cut the actual windows into the card. So those trapezoids come included in the bitty ball pop-up. It's going to be easy now to put one into each pencil line just centered. The pencil line will just be a little bit outside of the die. You can use any die cutting machine that can accommodate a wafer thin die as long as it has at least a 6-inch opening, so it'll accommodate the card. I'm using my Spellbinders Platinum 6, and I did make sure that the card is open so that I am only die cutting through the pattern paper and the top layer of the card. And I am going to run it through twice just to make sure that I get through both layers with those dies. A quick check of the back is usually an easy way to see that it's cut through both layers. And then once you know for sure that they're cut through both layers, then you can remove all of those dies. Now I have a piece of transparency that's going to go between the layers to cover all of the holes. I believe that transparency is 4.5-inch square. And then I'm using a tape runner to get it attached to the cardstock, but then I'll use my glue just because it's a little easier on the back of the paper. So that is the basic structure of a window card to fit the bitty ball pop-up. I've decided to create a flap and elastic closure. So I've started with a piece of cardstock, 2 1/4 inches wide by 6 inches tall, and then I've scored that into 3 3/4 inch panels. So that's going to give me 2 panels that can fold and attach to each other, and then a third panel that can attach to the back of the card. I went stash diving and found a snowflake-shaped brad, and then I'm going to elevate that brad by using the spacer dies that come in our flap and closure die set. And I used double-sided adhesive tape on the back of the cardstock so that those spacers would be stickers. And then I do need to pierce the hole then through the transparency because I've added that into the stack. Then I can get my decorative brad through and then open up the prongs on the inside of the card. And then I'll have that elevated brad to be able to catch the elastic. Then I'm adding my strong adhesive to one of the long panels of my flap, and then that's going to glue to the back of the card. Now I like to take just a little bit off the sides and make it a tapered tab. Just makes it a little bit easier on lining it up. So where that tapered tab is going to attach is to the very back of the card. So just getting it onto the back of the card so that it comes up to that first score line. So then I still have those 2 panels of the flap, they actually fold to each other, and then the whole thing folds over to keep the card closed. And I'm going to get the elastic now between the layers of the flap before I glue it together. Okay, so looping the elastic around my brad, I can use it as a guide to determine where I need to punch holes in the flap. And I decided that I wanted the elastic to kind of go on the outside of that one window. So now I can use my pencil just to mark on the flap where the elastic is going to hit it in the closed position. Then when I open it up, I can pierce a hole right on the fold in those two locations. And I do need to make sure that that hole is big enough to get that elastic cording through. From inside the flap, I'm going to weave the elastic cording up one hole and down through the other. And now I just want to tape that cording down inside the flap so that it's right over the fold line. So then with one side taped down, I can close up the flap and get the elastic over the brad. And then once it's over the brad, I can actually pull the other end of the elastic to take the slack out. And then I'll have a good amount of loop to leave showing for my closure. Then I just tape the other end of the elastic down inside the flap and cut off the excess. Now, I'm not going to seal this up permanently just yet. That way, once I get the ball inside the card, if I need to adjust the elastic, I can still get inside that flap and do so. Now, the easiest way to make window frames to fit the card would be to use the surprise ball, because those trapezoids are 20% larger. I can cut those out and then use the trapezoids from the bitty ball to cut out the center to make those perfect window frames. And those will also cover up my pencil lines, so I didn't need to erase them. And that is an optional step. It would look great just to erase the pencil lines and leave the windows without frames. A piece of pattern paper inside the card, 5 3/4 inch square for the main panel. There is a hexagon die in both the surprise ball and the bitty ball. It's just a matter of size. I used the larger one out of the surprise ball that will completely cover that inside hexagon and my brad prongs. However, it would look just as nice with the smaller one out of the bitty ball. And the best pressure I can get against that glue would actually be to flip the card over and press it from the outside. Also optional is whether you want to frame the inside window openings. I decided to go ahead and do it. I'm using the same polka dot red paper. It was just a stash item that I used for the big panel. Window framing done, and then I just need to get the hole pierced back through the pattern paper, so I can do that from the back of the card. For assembly of the bitty ball itself, I'm using 100-pound smooth cardstock, and I am following my best practices assembly tips from a recent video. Now you can find that on my YouTube channel, and I will link it at the end of this video if you need a much slower version of putting together the bitty or the surprise ball. So just best practices assembly, a brad put inside so that it can spin, using my really strong adhesive, 2 number 12 soft stretch rubber bands. Okay, here's the finished assembled bitty ball. I used another piece of photo play pattern paper that had ho 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 all over it, and I just paid attention to the orientation when I was die cutting those trapezoids. And now I can use the brad that's on the bottom of the bitty ball to get through the hole of the card and attach it. And then just keeping the ball flattened while I do that so that the brad does not fall out. Once the ball is installed inside the card, then I can spin it to where it lines up perfectly with the window openings. Quick check that the elastic length is good, and it is. So now I can seal up that flap permanently to hide the ends of the elastic. Now I really should have had a little bit less on the width of the front of the card so that it would be easier to fold that flap over the edge. And so I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to put that front of the card into my trimmer and just take a little bit off the side. And that way it'll just make it a little bit easier to fold that flap down and engage the closure than when it's exactly the same size. The cardstock that I chose for the card is just 80-pound cardstock, and you can see that it's bowing pretty well, but it's no big deal because I was planning on putting a panel on the back anyway, both to cover the brad prongs, to cover the flap, but then also to strengthen the card. And I'm going to use my 100-pound cardstock for the back. So you can always strengthen the card by just adding another panel of cardstock to the back, and that way you don't have to limit yourself to just 100-pound on the card itself. I wanted to bring a little bit more of the snowflake pattern paper to the inside of the card, so I used the scraps just to cut some thin strips that will fit on the inside flap and then to the side of the window openings. Similarly, I wanted to bring the polka dot paper to the front of the card, so I cut a thin strip for the outside flap. Our Tiny Gnomes die set is very popular. It's back in stock now, and there is an assembly video on it if you need it. So what I've done is assembled 3 little Christmas gnomes. One thing I did not consider is how their red bodies might get lost among all the red in the background. So I thought the way I would solve that is add a white circle underneath the ball. So I decided to use our Crosshatch circles and nested the smallest one inside the biggest one. If I didn't already have cardstock on the back of the card, I could just remove the ball and put the circle down. But since the cardstock's already on, I need to actually cut the circle so that I can just separate it and weave it in around the brad below the ball and then onto the card. And then I'll just make sure the seam is placed on the back where it's not going to be very noticeable. Flattening the ball will help me make sure that I get a good placement on the circle. And then, like I said, I just need to glue it down. Okay, so now I can glue my Christmas gnomes to every other panel, and I'm just making sure that the center of his face is kind of in the center of the trapezoid so that you'll be able to see it through the window. Now, when I first conceptualized this card, I thought I would use 6 Christmas gnomes, 1 on each side, but then I liked the ho 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 paper so well that I thought it would be fun to see 3 gnomes through the windows and then a ho 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 in the other 3. So then closing the card is just a matter of spinning the ball until all of the sides line up with the window openings and then stretching the elastic over the brad. Okay, so my card is substantially done. I just need to add a few finishing touches. For a greeting, I used Merry Christmas twice, once out of teal and once out of red, and that's from Word Set 3 Holiday. The only thing I added to the ball were some small snowflakes that come included in the Tiny Gnomes die set. And then I used that snowflake again on one of the crosshatch circles as a place to write a personal greeting. Okay, so there it is. My finished card measures 6 by 6, so it's going to need a square envelope and it is going to require extra postage. You know, another thing I really love about window cards is how you get that double duty decoration. So the inside decorations shine through the window and become the outside decorations too. And then I think it's always fun with pop-up cards when you can see something in the flat position, and then when you open the card, those items move or pop up or do something fun. So what I strive for with these monthly videos is to give you techniques and ideas. And so this does not have to be a Christmas card. As you can imagine, this is just a generic technique using our Bitty Ball pop-up to make a window card. However you decorate is completely up to you. This would make such a great birthday card as well. If you check the description box below this YouTube video, you will find supply links for the dies that I've used on the card, as well as a link to the blog post. And on the blog post, you'll find links to all of the great window cards made by our talented design team for this month's challenge. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com, where you can find out information about purchasing these dies, as well as links to all my other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.